Hello, and welcome to another episode of SPOILERCAST, a Hungry Gamers offshoot that not only aims to inform, entertain, and educate you. And on this one particular release from within the geek culture universe, we are going to be tackling a film that came out within the last week. And this episode, we're not only hoping to get into MIT, but also save the multiverse. That's right, we're slinging deep webs all about Spider-Man No Way Home. And the official IMDb synopsis reads as follows. With Spider-Man's identity now revealed, Peter asks Doctor Strange for help when a spell goes wrong. Ooh. Dangerous foes from other worlds start to appear, forcing Peter to discover what it truly means to be Spider-Man. And joining me today is a man who does everything he possibly can to keep his identity at the forefront of everyone's mind. You can find him on the socials at Jono himself, Australia's Jono Peck. Welcome to another episode of SPOILERCAST. How you doing?
Very well, Brendan. Thank you for having me here. We believe Mysterio, or do we?
Oh, I don't know. Like Jake Gyllenhaal is a very handsome son of a gun. He's a hell of an actor, very believable. If he's selling most of the time, I'm thinking about buying. So, maybe we do believe Mysterio. I don't know. I'm torn.
We'll get to that.
We will indeed, but yet we're here. We've got another SPOILERCAST episode on the cards. We lied and said that last week's episode of our favourite things of 2021 was the final 8-bit related piece of content for the year. Told you, big lie. We decided Spider-Man No Way Home is that damn good. We thought we'd jump on the mics and spoil it for you later, not right now. This is the non-spoiler section of the podcast, and we're just going to talk about our thoughts on the film, what we liked, what we maybe didn't like, hypothesize the future and things like that. But JP, maybe as we're sort of sitting here in the spoiler-free multiverse, let's talk about this movie. Obviously, we've had some reports coming through from THR today that Spider-Man No Way Home has swung to a record-breaking $253 million domestic box office weekend in the US, and it earned a further $334.2 million internationally to claim a global total of $587.2 million US dollars. That
in one weekend?
That's over one weekend. That is the third best global opening ever. Ever. And we're still balls deep in pandemic COVID lockdown, and people are like, you know what? We're going to chuck Spidey masks on and we're going to go out and cheer on Peter Parker and the crew. And they came out in force, $587.2 million US dollars in the span of a weekend.
It's insane. And it did have that kind of end game vibe at the movie theater. This isn't like the content of the movie we're talking about. It's just like the experience. Like, everyone's had a rough year, right? It's been such a crap time. We've missed out on a lot. We've had to watch, like, a lot of us have watched like Eternals or Shang-Chi or Black Widow at home. So we've missed that experience of going to the movies and having these crazy experiences. And my theater on opening day was just like, it was like Endgame in the sense of everyone like clapping, cheering, just having such a good time with this series that they've probably, not this series, but this character that they've been watching at the cinemas for the last 20 years. So yeah, it was awesome to get out and to go, even though it was kind of like also surreal being in a room with people and a bit anxiety inducing. I was sitting on like the row, fortunately, so I only had to worry about one person, and they were wearing a mask the whole time. So yeah, I mean, how did you find? You've been to a lot of movies, I know, since moving to Melbourne, even, but just the experience of going to this one, what was that like?
It was next level. It felt like I was at like the world premiere of it. Like the hype. I caught a mid-morning session. Like I went to an 11 o'clock session on the Thursday, and the cinema was still packed elbow to elbow,
Man.
which was uncomfortable. I didn't feel too great about it, to be honest, because obviously COVID's still kicking around, causing nonsense. And I hoovered my popcorn as quick as I could, and then I masked up for the rest of it. But outside of that precaution, the energy level in the cinema was spectacular. Like, yeah, people were screaming and laughing and crying and clapping. Like, we're all on this ride together. And it was great because you have a cinema experience like that, or you can have one where you've got little dickheads talking the whole time in the corner and just, annoying and ruining your experience. But this one, it was like we were all there together. We were hanging out with Peter Parker and friends and just enjoying this ride. And even though it was a longer movie, like it ran for over, like I think it was 2.5 hours final runtime on this thing. It did not feel that way. It didn't overstay its welcome. It had a pretty good pace right from the opening credits right through to the end credits, and then the mid-credits stinger, and then the end credits trailer teaser thingo. But it was awesome. I felt great being in there, especially because the last time I went to the cinema the week before was when I went and watched Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City. And boy, howdy, was that a misstep. But
no
this
cheering.
was just, I was cheering and smiling and happy. And just, this was, it was so great to be back.
Yeah. And I think we should probably set the table as far as spoilers go, because I know some people like don't even watch trailers for these things. So I think we will at least talk about what's in the synopsis and in the trailer, would you say?
I think so. It is a fine line. Like, we're not going to be those guys where we're going to be very ambiguous or throw words out there that you could get your detective caps on and piece together what we're saying. We're not going to be dicks more than usual. We're going to try and stick to the straight and narrow, and then give you the warning when we do jump into the full spoilers. So we'll sort of dance around some of those main plot points and some of those big moments, but avoid as much as we can, because we don't want to ruin this experience for anyone that's listening to this for the first time and hasn't seen the movie yet.
Yeah, it won't take us long to get to the spoilers, because there's not much we can say probably without spoiling it. But my general thoughts on the movie was it just felt like a great culmination of Spider-Man and Peter Parker's arc through the MCU. It's like since his first appearance in, was it Civil War, I think, through till, Homecoming, and then obviously ending here with No Way Home. Like it felt like that was like high school Peter, and this was his high school life, and this was the problems he was going through. And it feels like a great way to bring that era to a close without spoiling anything. But I think at the same time, it sets up what's going to happen next. So I think they did a great job of kind of pulling all that together, separating him from the Avengers, which they have kind of already did in the previous film, but even further, like there's no, obviously Tony Stark's not showing up in this movie, and we're not, it's that shouldn't be a spoiler, but I guess if you haven't seen Endgame, maybe. Anyway, I think it really kind of stamps the fact that Spider-Man is big enough to stand alone, doesn't need the Avengers to be amazing, and doesn't need to be like aspiring to be an Avenger. We've seen that in some of the other movies as well. And I just that's my general thoughts without going into detail. I've got a lot more to say, but we'll get to that. How about yourself?
I think you nailed it right there, JP. Like, I'm in complete agreement. Like, it's nice to see Peter Parker, aka Spider-Man, stand on his own 2 feet and sort of revert back a little bit to the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Yeah, gone are the global or multiversal stakes to begin with. But, it goes back to Peter just finding his way as a young kid and seeing this tour de force on the screen of Tom Holland just playing this role. He is Spider-Man for me now. It's so hard for me to disconnect him. Like, obviously, we've got fantastic films with a couple of other fantastic actors that has played Spider-Man in Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield over the years as well, but Tom Holland, for me, I feel he's always going to be Spider-Man from here on out, no matter what he plays. And, that can be good, bad, or otherwise. But I just adore him in this role. He brings so much heart to this character, so much believability in everything he's doing. And you can just see this poor kid on the screen. Like, even though he's early 20s in real life, like, he's still playing a teenage boy. And he plays it with this rawness and this realness in everything he does, in the joyful scenes, the sad scenes, the emotional scenes, and everything else in between. Like, he's just fully committed to this role. And same with the rest of the cast, like the casting in this film and just the acting from everybody involved, whether it be major antagonists or protagonists or just bit characters. They all know what their job is, and they all just nail it anytime they're on the screen. And it's just a joy to watch. Like, my thoughts, it's like the old Saturday morning cartoon meets MCU drama. Like it's just culminated into these two things where it makes you feel nostalgic and childlike. Like I feel like I'm watching the best parts of the cartoon or the comics come to the big screen, but also still not completely dismiss and forget about the MCU and everything that's played off in the back of in the greater universe or universes. And it's just expertly crafted together. Like this movie, there's so many moving parts and it doesn't feel like it collapses at all throughout it. It's a juggling act, but all those balls stay in the air right through until the end. And I just adored everything about it. I was smiling, I was laughing, I was crying. I did a couple of little like subdued cheers. I wanted to like really get into it in the cinema, but I was sort of, holding my back, but like, doing really aggressive like fist bumps and smiling ear to ear under the mask. But it was great. It's the best thing that I've watched this year on the big screen or from a film perspective. And yeah, I'm really excited to see where they go with this already confirmed next trilogy that they're sort of starting to hash out, that we'll talk about more in more detail in the coming minutes, I would imagine, JP.
Yep.
But it's so good. It's so good. I love Tom Holland. I love Zendaya as MJ. I love their chemistry and their just believable friendship and care that they have for one another on the screen. It just flows through into my eyeballs and fills my heart up, and it just makes me so happy.
It's very wholesome. Lots of wholesome moments in this movie, and lots of emotion, that's for sure. Definitely one of the more emotional MCU movies, I'd say.
Yeah, and it's funny too, because Peter Parker, even through some of the Endgame stuff and some of the other scenarios that have played out, he's constantly like that ballast that's copping those big emotional scenes. Like he's in there raw and broken and lost, and he just brings it. God, Tom Holland is just a little legend, and I love him. I want to give him a high five, and if he's old enough to have a beer, depending on where we are in the world, I would buy him a beer too.
I think he's like 25, isn't he?
Yeah, probably. I'll buy him whatever he wants.
Yeah. Should we get to some nitpicks?
Yeah. Throw your nitpicks, your gripes, your bugbears, whatever you got for this movie, because I don't really have many, if any.
They're definitely nitpicks. So this isn't a spoiler, but the movie begins with this concept that Mysterio has died and announced Peter Parker's identity to the world. And one thing that I didn't like was just how quickly everyone just dumped on Peter Parker and Spider-Man and forgot that he was an Avenger and that he'd saved the world so many times, and that he has like the tick of approval from Tony Stark and from Captain America, and he like friends with Doctor Strange, like all these people. He just has no goodwill. It's just like, oh, Mysterio, this guy that just rocked up out of nowhere and was a bit, some people thought that he was a villain, and we're just going to believe him. We believe Mysterio. It's
just, the Rupert Murdoch of this film or this universe, J. Jonah Jameson. He drives the media and he controls the narrative. And everyone just turns on poor Peter, even though he's done everything for everybody. But one mysterious hero from another dimension, in air quotes with Mysterio, he releases one video at his death, and they're like, "Yep, Peter, you're dead to us. Spider-Man, you're the worst. Boo you," and it sucks.
Yeah, and I mean, that's really important for the story to progress, and that's one of my nitpicks with a lot of the character choices that had me had me shaking my head a little bit, saying like, they wouldn't actually do that. That doesn't line up with what we think about the character. And I'll get to those when we're in spoiler territory, because there was a few things that just like bothered me from that writing perspective. But at the same time, I understand that they made the characters do these things to have a more interesting movie. But the fact that it kind of irked me just says to me that they could have perhaps worked a little harder to make those parts work. Maybe they needed to cast a bit more doubt over Peter Parker's purity when they made that big reveal with Mysterio. There has to be a bit more to it, because it's just like he's a social pariah. None of the colleges want to have anything to do with him, kind of thing, or he's afraid that they're not going to have anything to do with him. I mean, it's very like in real life. I think if someone was Spider-Man and then unmasked, there'd be maybe like at worst it would be 50-50. But in this movie, it seems like the people
it's like
that
80-20.
Yeah, it's like his school teacher Martin Starr still happy with him, and everyone else is like, nah, you're no good.
Yeah, and it's just
Smooth.
it feels very knee jerky as far as society just pulling the rug out from under him because the sort of one of the dean or the head of admissions at one of these colleges, then sees Peter Parker do a good deed. That's all I'm going to say, a heroic act. And then all of a sudden she's changed again. It's like, what about all these other good deeds? It was very like fast and loose as far as where she stood morally, where she's like, nah, you're bad news. Your friends are bad news. But then he does one heroic deed, and then she's like, okay, yeah, maybe I'll talk to my people. We'll get you in. It's all good. Don't worry about it. And I'm like, come on, stand by your decisions, please.
Yeah, it's almost as if saving her counts for more than saving the world. Like,
yeah,
Tilby's in the chat saying it's because he killed someone. Well, did he? And like court of public opinion versus court of law. But he, even if he killed someone, he also defeated Thanos. So, and brought people back from the snap and everything. It's kind of like,
yeah.
But
like, then it's like, yeah, what is the value of a life? Where do you weigh it? It gets into that whole thing, and yeah, it's interesting because they threw him under the bus with all the Stark drones and everything. Like, there's some scenarios playing out where he's, I guess, under investigation and getting summons by the FBI to sort of share his experiences and statements, and they're trying to throw the book at him and hold him accountable for everything that happened in Far From Home. And yeah, it was a bit lazy in the writing. Like, you think this, like Stark Industries, it's $1 trillion company. You think there'd be people in there representing him and they'd squash this thing quick.
Yeah, you'd think Stark could come out and say Mysterio's lying, and then it's like, case closed. He's a liar. He's a bad guy. And then
someone attached to Stark, because obviously
Shield or something. Like there's these. Well, I meant Stark Industries when I said Stark.
Yeah. Any representative of the Avengers that's still around. Yeah. Come on.
I guess a lot of them have kind of nicked off though. Like there's not really many of them hanging around.
Get Pepper Potts to roll in for 2 seconds.
Bruce
I think
Banner's
they're overmarried
still
in the
around,
films.
isn't he?
Was that, sorry?
Bruce Banner's still kicking around, isn't he?
Who knows what he's up to? He's probably off doing Planet Hulk already or something. But there was just a couple of little weird bits of lazy writing where it's like, okay. I know what you're doing to move this forward and raise the stakes, but you could have done a little bit better. But it doesn't derail the story for me.
No, it's not about that ultimately. It's just we are nitpicking here, and it's not a perfect film. Sorry, Spidey freaks out there.
In some ways, like, I think it's perfect from a user and enjoyment perspective, but as far as traditional film writing goes, it's not perfect in that sense. But
you can't say
it felt perfect last week.
There's a difference between it being a 10 out of 10 and being perfect, though. I'll say that.
Yeah, it's like, you're a young dad now. You think Mike is perfect and he's the greatest son. He's the apple of your eye, but there's a few things. He's a bit of a cheeky little devil, but he's still perfect. And that's this movie.
Yeah. Insert spouse, insert, whatever it is, of course.
Whatever. But JP, maybe final spoiler-free thoughts before we start deep diving and just going fast and loose on anything.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just close with saying that I think the way that this film ends and the position that it puts Peter Parker in is going to make a really interesting, sequel to this or spin-off of this or however you would want to put it. And I think, the actual experience of watching this movie is up there with any Marvel event. Like Endgame and Infinity War kind of stand separately. I guess the first time you see the Avengers together stands a bit separately. But aside from the novelty of seeing those characters kind of combined, this stands up with any. It's a very unique experience, and it stands up there with as much fun as I've had watching a Marvel movie ever, I'd say.
Yeah, and I'm right there with you. Like, it's up there with Ragnarok for me as far as just good, wholesome fun that I enjoyed from start to finish. Couple little gripes aside, brilliant film, highly, highly, highly enjoyable. It's my favorite Spider-Man film, I reckon, or maybe tied. I'm going to say equal favorite Spider-Man film, tied with Into the Spider-Verse. I think those two sort of stand above everything else in my eye. Maybe there's some recency bias, but I just loved everything about this movie. I loved the cast. I loved the story, the big action set pieces, some of the things we're going to talk about shortly when we start going spoilery. I just adored everything about this movie, and I'm very, very excited for the future of this character and hopefully for his continued presence in the broader MCU. I know there's still this Disney, Sony frenemy nonsense that's always going on, but I think as long as Disney keeps backing up the truck full of money, Sony are going to keep listening and allowing them to sort of dig in and cherry pick characters from this Spider-Man universe. And I hope that continues long, long, long into the future. But go check this movie out. If you got kids, take your kids. If you got a partner, take your partner. If you got no one, just go solo, because it is a brilliant, brilliant movie. And it's even more hype when you're checking it out on the big screen with fellow Spidey heads that are just popping off at these big, brilliant moments. It's my favorite movie of the year, and it was funny because it just sort of, the past 7 days I've sort of just been climbing this stairway of anticipation, you could say. Like, started last week, watched Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City, stepped on that stair and it was a bit shaky and a bit, okay. But then I watched Ghostbusters Afterlife and I was cloud nine. I'm like, yeah, this is the best, I love it. And I still do love that film. Go check that out too. And then I got to check out Spider-Man Far From Home, and then when I got home from Spider-Man, No Way Home, sorry, Spider-Man No Way Home, I managed to catch Hawkeye episode number 5 on Disney Plus, and seeing some of the potential broader connective tissue here that we'll talk in more detail soon got me hyped. And then season 2 of The Witches just dropped on Netflix, so it's just been this pop culture roller coaster over the past 7 days, and my heart is so full, and I might need to go to a doctor because it's probably not this healthy to be this erect for 7 days straight. But you know what? It is what it is. But JP, what do you think? Should we put a pin in the non-spoilers and start shifting into spoiler territory?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, listeners, if you haven't watched the movie just yet, maybe press pause on the pod right now, run to the cinema, popcorn, large Coke or Pepsi, maybe some M&Ms, Maltesers, whatever. Watch the movie, rush back, and then hit play on this podcast again, because we are...
Full spoilers ahead.
So, I think we might just do a super quick elevator pitch as far as the story of Spider-Man No Way Home. A couple of quick sentences just to bring everything to the forefront. So Peter Parker wants the world to forget he's Spider-Man, so he works with Doctor Strange to make the world forget. The spell that Doctor Strange attempts to cast goes sideways. Multiple characters begin to appear from alternate dimensions, which sees Peter work with himself to send everyone home and save the multiverse. On top of that, Strange then casts the spell to make the world forget Peter Parker exists. So there's obviously other little storylines and other plot points going on around this, but I think that's a nice little capsule that encompasses the main heartbeat of this movie.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Summed it up well.
So JP, share me your general thoughts. Share me your overview. Go as spoiler as you like. You take this wherever you want.
Well, I said before that it was like a great combination of Spidey and the MCU, but that was a ruse. It's actually a culmination of like every Spider-Man franchise that we've had. You know, Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, Tom Holland. It's, you know, it might sound weird to say it's a culmination of those series that aren't necessarily related, but in that aspect, I think it was almost redemption for those two series, because they both kind of finished in ways that weren't that don't really encapsulate the way that we feel about Spider-Man. So Spider-Man 3 is obviously the low point of the Maguire movies.
Can confirm.
Despite my man Topher Grace being involved. And and then, enter Electro or whatever that Amazing Spider-Man movie was called. Just a really bad handling of Electro as a character, which was retconned superbly in this film somehow, even down to giving him a sweet fade and fixing up the costume and stuff. But yeah, just the redemption for that series probably not quite hitting the way that we hoped it would, despite Garfield being a fabulous Peter Parker, I think. Arguably the best, I think still arguably the best Peter Parker. Not saying the best Spider-Man. It's a different conversation.
Yeah, I can agree with you in parts. I just adore Tom Holland to another level now. But yeah, Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man and seeing him back in this role really, really brought a lot of positive memories and a lot of emotions out in me again when I was watching, because he's another one of these fantastic actors that just gives it his all on screen no matter what he plays, and he fully committed to being Peter Parker.
I guess he was a little too good looking and jockey. He was a skateboarder in that movie, I remember, and I was thinking Peter Parker's meant to be this massive dork, so maybe I'm backtracking over my own words there, but
dorks can skateboard, JP. Don't you be throwing hate to dorks that skate.
It's almost like saying that it's not cool to be a skater anymore, though, is the point. I was like, skaters are still cool. Why is he skating? Anyway,
people roller skate now, JP.
Yeah.
Get it right.
I guess if you put Andrew Garfield in the MCU instead of Tom Holland, I think people would be saying he's the best Spider-Man, just because Tom Holland, as amazing as he is, he's definitely had the best material to work with. He's had the best movies to work with. He's had the best writing to work with, best special effects and costumes and everything. So it's hard to it's not all things equal when you compare them. And even Tobey Maguire, he had some pretty rough, cheesy stuff to work with, and people still love him for it. So kudos to him. Seeing him in this movie in a more grounded world, in an MCU world, was so cool as well. But yeah, I guess, going back to what my original point was, I think that this is closing the circle on those two Peter Parkers, giving them some closure and some of the storylines that we didn't get to see continue. Seeing the older Peter Parker in Maguire, who's continued to live his life, continued to fight crime, and seemingly had this life with MJ that seems to be happy, and they're still together, which they did a great job of using that to show that you can have happiness as Peter Parker. And then on the other side, we saw Garfield as the kind of in between those two, between Tom Holland's and Maguire's, where Tom Holland's character is still very much hurting with the trauma that he's been through, even still recently with Aunt May, but just in general. And then seeing Garfield hurt by that, affected by that, coping with that PTSD, for lack of a better term, and wanting to see Tom Holland Peter avoid all that. I love that they did that. They obviously had possibly in the next segment we'll talk about our favorite moments, but Garfield had almost his Spider-Man had almost the best moment of the whole movie as far as redemption goes.
Yeah.
And I liken it almost to the way that the film Logan basically saved Wolverine's legacy, because the X-Men series and there's Wolverine Origins, and it's just almost they've done Wolverine to death, and it's kind of taken some of the shine off it a bit by just going back to the well too often. And then they just ended it with Logan and really putting a lot of care into that character in a way that I think, like I said, saved Wolverine's legacy. And I think that this does a similar thing with Garfield especially, but also Maguire, because it's been so long and people don't look back at those movies as fondly now. They tend to say, that they don't really hold up, and I haven't watched them for a while. But I've definitely heard people say that they're a harder movie to rewatch these days. It has been 20 years.
Yeah, they certainly don't hit the same as they did. Back when we were in our teens, watching these, and it was some of the biggest films at the time, and seeing some of these comic book characters realized and developed in a appropriate way. But I wanted to sort of hit and agree that this movie is a good word to describe or define this movie is redemption. I think for so many characters on the good and the bad side of the respective fences.
It's a good point. Yeah.
Redemption's a perfect word to sort of describe this, and I love that you went with how Logan de-tarnished Wolverine, and even like if you expand it out a little bit more and go, the Deadpool movies destroyed and also made fun of the whole Weapon X Ryan Reynolds nonsense in X-Men Origins and all that kind of nonsense. So it's on that similar path where it's righting a lot of wrongs, but also acknowledging some of the wrongs within the writing, like referencing some of the characters and some of the moments that happened in Toby or Andrew's respective Spider-Man movies, bringing it up, making fun of it, or admitting or realizing it. And I thought it was very clever. It was just real subtle with how they just threw those little lines in with some of the interactions and back and forths when we saw Peter 1, Peter 2, and Peter 3 getting together and sharing their war stories, and this is here and it's not there, and I know this guy and I've been to space. Like, it was just so great, but just really, really subdued storytelling, which I like, because anyone that's watched these movies go, oh, I know that, like there was many fan service moments in this movie, but it's not a bad thing, because a lot of it helped shape these relationships and these bonds that were starting to form, especially with Peter, and not only the cast of enemies from alternate dimensions, but also the relationships with Peter 2 and Peter 3, or even the relationships with MJ and Ned, just sort of seeing how it all plays out, and just watching these people just try and coexist and do the right thing. Like, I loved it. And general thoughts from a spoiler perspective, my goodness, there was some of the biggest wow moments for me I've ever experienced in this MCU. Like, not maybe from the size or the potential scope of the moment itself, but just a wow as far as how it made me feel. Like, full of happiness, like just overflowing with emotion with some of these things we'll talk about in the favorite moments. So maybe we can just pivot and start talking about some of these big moments, or even just the small subdued moments that still hit, that we really enjoyed. So JP, what's some of your favorite things that played out while you viewed No Way Home?
Yeah, I mean, if you start early in the movie and kind of work through, I think seeing Matt Murdock show up in this movie was such a great thing.
Oh my God.
I kind of had it spoiled for myself a little bit, but I guess spoilers for Hawkeye, if you haven't seen that, close your ears for like 10 seconds. But seeing that they're bringing into that world Kingpin makes you go, okay, so we've got Matt Murdock, we've got Kingpin. Daredevil was such a great series that I really am glad that they're honoring how good it was by including it in the MCU. Like, they're bringing them into the MCU, which is just good to see.
Expertly played in the media and on social media, where they're like, oh yeah, like, Kevin Feige's like, yeah, that Matt Murdock, he's our Daredevil. Like, if things pop up, he's going to be there. So, like, there's all these little breadcrumbs that everyone's just like, yes, he's going to be sticking around. Charlie's our guy. And then all of a sudden, boom, boom, within the span of 24 hours, you get that big Hawkeye reveal, and then you get the No Way Home reveal. And I was frantically leg clapping with one hand when I saw Matt Murdock sitting at that desk, and then does the brick grab as it goes flying through the window, and I'm like, oh my God, are we going to get a lot more Hell's Kitchen, Brooklyn, small town crime vibe? Fuck yes, we are. Bring it on.
What about you? What were some of your best moments?
Yeah, like don't know if I'm going to be able to go chronologically here, because I'm just getting emotional thinking about all the things in this movie, but just an overarching one I wanted to throw is just any of the scenes with Tom Holland and Zendaya, or Spidey and MJ. They just are just a magnet for me, as far as my attention just goes wholly and solely to them two. Just seeing this awkward budding teenage romance, and they're just cute as shit together.
Yes.
And I love, and I just want to see them succeed. And, you know, we won't go to the end now, but like the end hurt me, JP, as far as things with that and those two. So anything that they did on screen together, I was just like, I'm all in. I don't care if we just have a Peter Parker and MJ
rom-com.
go to college and it's just, a rom-com, just sedated, no superheroing around, just them two being cutie patooties.
Yeah.
But that initial meeting when we got the big, like, whoa, the biggest pop of the movie was where we got that Peter 1, Peter 2, and Peter 3 coming together. Or maybe if we jump back a little bit and where we had them both come through into
the kitchen.
Into Ned's grandmother's kitchen / lounge room. And just that exchange with Peter, Grandma, Ned, and MJ was just, I was pissing myself laughing, but I was smiling. My heart was exploding. And I was just all in that moment, JP. It's some of the best cinema from a personal enjoyment perspective I can remember in a long time.
Yeah, I'll just quickly go back to the MJ and Peter thing before we move on from that. But the opening of the movie with them like swinging through the air and her like struggling to breathe as they're like falling and rising. Like, I don't think I've seen a Spider-Man movie do that before. Like usually, like you think back to like Spidey and Kirsten Dunst swinging through the air, and she's just like, this is amazing,
endless bliss, you know, smiling, and you know, no bugs hitting her in the face. She's just cruising, it's holding on, like, and it's her own, almost like a lot of her arm strength goes into it too, and she's just so peaceful. But yeah, this is a real web swing moment, and it's the best. Yeah,
and that was great. And then they're awkward, like getting her through the bedroom window, and then Happy and May walking in on them, and like all that stuff was great comedy. But yeah, the first appearance of Andrew Garfield and then later Tobey Maguire, that was the comedy gold of the movie. Like that was just so funny. The way that MJ was like so skeptical of whether they were legit or not, thinking like, okay, up to now we've just had a bunch of villains try to show up and kill us. So who are these guys?
Yeah,
wearing Spider-Man suits and whatever. And when he jumps up and just like attaches his fingers to the roof, and then
when Grandma's like, "Can you get the cobwebs out of the corner there?" You know, climbs along the roof, gets the cobwebs down. It's oh my god,
she still doesn't believe
gold.
him.
It was gold.
Yeah, and I mean that scene, like when the portal opens, I don't know like how people can tell because I couldn't tell, but as soon as they saw Spidey through that portal, everyone in my theater started cheering. I'm like, I don't know these suits as well as you, but somehow they could see that they knew straight away that's not Tom Holland, that's Garfield.
Yeah, I think it's just, what else were you going to do in that moment from just a big cinematic pop? Like they knew that was the time, and if it was just Tom Holland walking back through, I think there would have been a very deflated audience in the cinema then, but it was so well done, and oh my god, it's very, very childlike moment in the cinema. Everyone, old, young, and in between, were just popping big time, and it was the best.
Yeah, and then I guess following on from that, you had the scene where they do meet Peter for the first time, Tom Holland Peter, or Peter 1, whatever you want to call him, and when you realize that, these guys are going to be here for the rest of the movie because they're not going anywhere, they're here to help, they basically, they're putting him ahead of themselves, because it would be so easy for them to go back to their world and not have to deal with these villains and risk their lives and whatever they're going to do. But they see this guy struggling and they know that they need to help him. And then that rolls into the scene in the laboratory, which is probably the next best comedy moment of the movie, where you have the hilarity of just the three people, the same person, and trying to communicate and learning about each other, and the confusion of like, you know, Ned's trying to talk to them and he's like, Peter Parker. And they're like, what? Who are you talking to? Yeah, that was great. That was so good. It
was really good. And they just had brilliant chemistry together on screen, those three Peters. Yeah. And I just liked that, they were all in different stages of their life, and hearing the good and the bad stories. And the part where Toby does clear up, as you mentioned, talking about, him and MJ are still together. They're making it work. It's not easy. And just seeing him give these other two younger Peters that slither of hope, that there's hope yet for you to live a normal-ish life and find love. And obviously we've got two potential romances on one, like as the bread in the sandwich. And then you've got, that Andrew Garfield situation where he wasn't able to save Gwen Stacy, who tragically died in his films. But he gets that redemption arc where he saves Tom Holland's MJ. And it was just this moment where the crowd erupted in the movie. Like, everyone's like, yes! Like, it was like being at like a sports event. Yeah, it was.
It's like the guy saves the ball at the, at the yard line or whatever. It was like far out there. And the thing was, like, Tom Holland goes for her, gets like sideswiped.
Yeah. Gets smashed by the Green Goblin's bloody glider. And everyone's like, not again!
And everyone's kind of like perking up a little bit, like, what's like, is it gonna be, what we want it to be? And then Garfield goes off and people start to murmur a bit more. And then when he swings down and grabs her just in time, everyone just exploded. And it's such a great payoff. And it's I think a really, really great testament to the loyalty and the intelligence of the Spider-Man audience, that they can have a moment like that that's so meaningful, that's a direct reference to a movie that came out like 8 years ago or something. He didn't say, like, they didn't spell it out in this movie. He didn't say, I couldn't save her. I tried to catch her when she was falling and her head snapped against the ground. He just said, like, I couldn't save her. And we remember that because we're big Spider-Man fans. Not everyone necessarily would connect those exact dots. So I think it's a credit to them for being a little bit more subtle with it, not holding your hand through the significance of that moment, and letting the people who remember that just feel the utter joy of that moment.
Most definitely. Yeah. And there was a lot of just that subtle storytelling that was sort of touched on there, and something that, not storytelling at all, but just a fantastic moment that was endearing and real, and also comedic gold was where Andrew Garfield and Toby were doing the back crack, when he's like, I've been doing this for so long, and he's like, do you want me to crack your back? Like, oh my God, I was in stitches with that little scene. It was just a little nothing throwaway bit as they were prepping for the big final showdown, but it was just more gold on top of that mountain that was made of gold. And God, I just was smiling and just chuckling.
Yeah, that sequence was great because it had that vibe of like the Into the Spider-Verse and the Jake Johnson Peter Parker, who's a bit older and maybe a little bit more out of shape, and the banter that you got between the different Peter Parkers, so good. And Tilby's in the chat saying, "What's the Avengers? Are you in a band?" That sequence, the sequence of him saying, like, we need to do teamwork. I've been in a team before. I was in the Avengers expecting them to be really impressed, but obviously they had never heard of the Avengers.
Yeah, it's like, who?
And then when that leads into the scene of the three of them like swinging together into action, just that superhero pose moment was like so epic and amazing. And I said to you, like, in the chat that we have this week, like, I can't even explain why that's such an emotional and cool thing. Like, it's just three Spider-Man. But it was just so cool and emotional. I just can't even put it into words. It
was just this movie. Like, I think, I don't know. I can't speak for the universe and say it's universally emotional, a lot of these moments. But I think for a great many of us, this movie just hit and was just exactly what we needed, especially with things not being as good as they are in current society with COVID and this bloody another strain or strand that's causing drama. So it was a great couple of hours of escapism, and it was just good, pure, wholesome content that just made you forget, but also remember things from your past with these movies and where you were at the time when you watched them. So it was really, really well done. And something else that was well done, JP, in this is the antagonists. So obviously we get a couple of iterations from these other universes. We've got obviously Willem Dafoe coming back as Mr. Osborn, aka Green Goblin. We also get Alfred Molina coming back as Dr. Otto Octavius, and we get Jamie Foxx coming back as Electro. As you said, he gets a little bit of a narrative change and a little bit of a glow up as Max Dillon. And also, God, his name escapes me now, who's playing the Sandman.
Thomas Hayden Church?
Yeah, from Ned and Stacey.
Yes.
Yeah. Apologies, Thomas Hayden Church, but we get him. And then we also get...
Kurt Connors, yeah.
Yeah, we get Kurt Connors. And it's primarily, though, the Doc Ock and Goblin show, I think.
Yes.
You know, we get some Jamie Foxx love, and he's also just been cool Jamie Foxx as opposed to nerdy Max Dillon pre-falling in a tub of eels. But... This is very much the redemption stories of Doc Ock and Norman Osborn, and I loved it. Like Willem Dafoe is just, I don't know, he's another one of these just magnets on the screen that just sucks you in. Like he just pulls you towards himself whenever he's on screen, and because he's got like no disrespect to his facial features, but he's got a very goblin-like face, a very emotive face.
It's very expressive, yes.
Yeah, and when he smashed the Green Goblin mask, I was cheering because I hate that big plastic behemoth piece of nonsense. So when that got busted up, I'm like, yes, we're going to see maybe a fabric mask that you've known from the comics or the TV shows. But instead it was just
his face.
Willem Dafoe with a hood on and his face, you know, living the goblin life.
Great.
But it was great. He had a really good turn where obviously bad to good, back to bad, then to good ultimately. Doc Ock had a pretty swift turn. They just fixed the little memory chip in the back of his neck, and he was happy days, helping out wherever he could.
And those were really important moments too. Like I think, first of all, like William Dafoe, brilliant actor. The fact that he can portray the difference between Norman Osborn and the Green Goblin just with his facial expressions,
with
really.
His mannerisms, yeah.
Exactly. Like he doesn't need the mask. It's like putting a mask on him does a disservice to the character because he's such a great actor. And he was like, did they do anti-aging on these two guys? Because they look exactly the same as they did to me, at least 20 years ago.
I don't think they did. I think they might have done
just makeup, maybe.
Maybe, yeah, just some makeup. Like Jamie Foxx obviously just had a glow up where they just let him look like normal Jamie Foxx, but I think the other ones they just chucked a bit of makeup on him and let him go. They look good.
Yeah,
they look really good.
They look great. Look better than Toby. Like
he's seen some things.
Yeah, they let Toby age. I'm gonna have to look up what these guys look like now because I would be shocked if they looked that good still. Even J.K. Simmons still looks really good. But anyway,
but J.K. Simmons has looked the same for like 30 years.
Yeah,
he's been 60 since he was 30. Like, and I love that about him.
Yeah, true.
He's just a fantastic presence on screen whenever he's there. And also, talking about people that don't age, Marissa Tomei as Aunt May. My goodness gracious, she is a very, very attractive woman, and she's great in that role. Very endearing, very wholesome. They lean into her work with Feast in the charity and the not-for-profit stuff. And big moment, I think, as far as what happens with Aunt May, ultimately meeting her demise at the hands of Norman Osborn, and very, very heart-wrenching.
Yeah, and it comes on the back of some emotional moments prior to that where we just alluded to it before, but like Doc Ock gets cured, and like that was the moment for me that I remembered, oh wait, he was a good guy. Like he was friends with Peter, and we just played like Spider-Man in 2018 on PlayStation, and he was like a really lovable, kind of likable character until the, technology turns against him, and it is this kind of tragedy. And so for him to turn back was a great moment, but then for him to meet Tobey Maguire, Peter, at the end of the movie, and for them to have a moment together, and he was like, it's great to have you back, Otto, or whatever he said. Like that was a nice little kind of full circle bit of closure for a character that is in one of the biggest superhero films of all time, I guess, prior to the MCU. But yeah, so leading from those emotional moments into the the heel turn of Norman going back into the Green Goblin. And then it was just kind of like, oh, what's going on now? What's going to happen? They went there. They killed Aunt May, and it was. I have to say, if we can backtrack to favorite moments if you want to after I say this, but that was one of the parts of the movie that didn't sit well with me was her death, because I was just so consumed by the thought of like, why didn't they press the button on this device? Like, why? Like they had a system, didn't they? Like, wasn't MJ supposed to press the button if she didn't hear from Peter? Like, there's this huge fight taking place.
It was very tough because they didn't really stipulate, like, if you don't hear from me within 90 minutes or whatever, it was just like, if you don't hear from me in a while, press the button. And it's like, well, what's a while? How do you measure that?
Like, send a text. They're trying to kill me now. Press the button. Like, Aunt May is about to die.
Pete should have had a panic button that then he could press and it reverts to MJ's phone or whatever. But it was
FaceTime,
a big moment. It was a very big moment because we did get the "with great power comes great responsibility" quote that obviously the other two Peters got from Uncle Ben, where Tom Holland's Peter got it from Aunt May, and then having them share that same line, like where you can see Tom is broken up on that sort of roof of that skyscraper, and he's a ruined little young man. Like his only family figure that he's had in his life for years now has now just been ripped away, and he's got vengeance in his heart, and all he wants to do is go kill Green Goblin. But then they unpack their respective traumas that happened in their universes where they lost their Uncle Ben's to Tom's Aunt May, and it's a really, really great moment. Very heavy, very emotional, and it's great to see because that's what friends do. You help your friends with your trauma, and we've all gone through similar things in life. Everyone's got stories, everyone's got scars, and it was really, really great. Like, it was a very heavy period of time in the movie, but it was needed, I think, to break it up from the constant sunshine and rainbows and laughs.
Definitely, yeah. You have to have those moments in movies like this, or there's nothing to rise against in the third act. And yeah, I mean, like I said earlier, there was a lot of character choices that I didn't like, and I think they could have been written better. The fact that Aunt May, of all people, was giving Peter his advice about what to do with these supervillains. Like, you can't just send them back. Like, she doesn't know what she's talking about. She's not an Avenger. Like, she doesn't know what these people are capable of, and she has no idea how to cure them or how to, cure their mutations or their psychosis or whatever's wrong with them. But she's just saying blanket, like, Peter, we don't do this. That's not what we're about. And I'm thinking, like, these people would kill you without a second thought, and they ended up doing so. But, like, like, we all remember, like, Doc Ock kidnapping Aunt May in Spider-Man 2. Like, it just was a frustrating thing for her to be so blanket, like, this is what we're doing, and Peter being like, you're right. I'm going to steal this device from Doctor Strange, who I look up to and who is my hero and I'm intimidated by, and he's like the
former
master.
Sorcerer Supreme, one of the strongest beings like in the universe, and he's just like, I'm stealing your magic box, boy.
Yeah, and he's just like, oh, no, I'm just a dumb kid. I'm just going to steal it. And he like, this is what it comes down to. He is an emotional dumb
teenager.
Kid.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the saving grace of it justifying that, I guess. But at the same time, just like, Peter, you're pissing me off. Like, you could avoid all of this. These people died in their world. That's what was meant to happen. You're gonna have Loki and the Time Lords on your case if you mess with the timelines and send them back alive. Like, that didn't really happen in this movie, but it's got to make me think, like, what are they called? The variants or whatever. Like,
yeah.
It's starting to mess around with what's meant to be. So he should have just pressed the dare button. But anyway, it wouldn't have been a very fun movie if he did that. So I understand it. It's just. Yeah,
I get your grievances. I get your gripes. I think it just comes down to their kids. Like, they're teenagers. They think, you meet kids, we were kids. We know better. We'll sort it out. We don't need nobody's help. We'll get it sorted. And I think Aunt May, yeah, she tries to see the good in everybody. you know, you look at her sort of life and what she does in her career or her profession. And I'd assume that no doubt after the things that played out in Endgame and such, Peter was sharing stories with Aunt May, maybe about how Loki actually tried to be good, or you know, some of these baddies did come good. Maybe they got an update about Killmonger, how I was like, you know what, I kind of believe this dude. He had some good ideas here as far as helping and righting wrongs in the world. So you know, maybe they just feel, or they choose to believe, that no one can't be redeemed, can't be saved. And it's silly to do that. You know, war criminals and pseudo-terrorists, you could call these people, but they're like, just take them into Happy's condo. It'll be right. You know, don't restrain or sedate them. Just let them use all this $1 trillion technology and weaponry. Just, you know, I'll be in the lounge room watching, you know, Real Housewives while you guys tinker in the back. And it was a bit strange, but it still worked. Yeah.
And I did like, I guess it may have come from a comic book, because there's a million comic books that I haven't read, but they did use the line of Aunt May's from, at least I know it from the video game, like, if you help somebody, you help everybody. That was like her big thing in the game, and it was on her, I think it was on her tombstone in this movie, which was, if that was a reference to the game, very well played. If it's something that she's just known for throughout all the iterations of Aunt May, then fair enough too.
Yeah, no, I agree. Maybe if we pivot more into some of these nitpicks and gripes, one of the other ones, and Nobu touched on it in the chat as well, where all these Spider-Mans and the common thread, I guess, with these people getting pulled through is because they know Spider-Man's identity in their respective universes for the most part. Like Doc Ock does, Lizard does, Green Goblin does, but Electro doesn't. And obviously we get the funny throwaway line. It's like, I just thought there was always a black kid from Queens, you know, which, you know, everyone was like, oh, Miles Morales, please, come on down. But yeah, so there was some inconsistencies as far as how these people got pulled through or why.
Yeah. Did they all know Peter Parker did Sandman know Peter Parker was Spider-Man? Like I didn't remember all of that happening.
I'm pretty sure he does. But
did all of these guys know that?
Yeah. Like Doc Ock definitely does.
Yeah.
Green Goblin definitely does. Sandman, who cares? Kurt Connors does.
Okay. Yeah.
But the Max Dillon, the Electro, it's like he's just here getting a glow up, looking good. And I do like that they fan service the shit out of his look when he goes full Electro and he gets the proper comic book garb with like
so good.
You know, the lightning bolt electric ray headpiece, and it was slick as hell. But yeah, it was just a couple little missteps where the story takes some liberties to go, you know what, we need them in there, so we'll make it work. Don't think about it too heavily. And there was just not a ton of explanation on some of those big points, especially with how. I'll leave that actually to the very end. Mm-hmm. But both these final points have actually got in my nitpicks and gripes as like the end and then a credits related thing. So I might just chuck it over to you real quick just to keep the continuity going.
I've got some stuff at the end that we can touch on. But I guess the other kind of nitpick would just be like, what's going on with Ned? Like, are we going to get any kind of explanation about how he's able to open these portals and stuff?
Yeah. Like, he just picks up Doctor Strange's sling ring and then he just goes, I can't remember the wording, but he's like, you know, show me Peter or whatever. And then it's just there. Like, he can just suddenly cast magic. I know there was a reference, that like a line he said earlier where he's like, you know, there's magic in my family and whatever else. Yeah. But then he's just suddenly a budding sorcerer supreme. Like, what?
Pretty much. And it's just like, I feel like that throwaway gag, which was like Doctor Strange saying, "Oh, you should see a doctor about that tingling feeling or whatever." Yeah, they use that to kind of justify, oh, well, maybe Ned does have a bit of magic, and we'll never talk about it again.
and that's another thing. Like, or have you got any other gripes before maybe we pivot to the end and talk about the repercussions?
That was it. I just remember like how hard it was for Doctor Strange to learn magic. Like it took him traveling to Tibet and like getting sent out of his body and playing around with whatever that character's name was, the bald chick. What's her deal?
Oh, I can't remember her name.
You know,
the former
her.
Sorcerer Supreme.
Yeah, exactly. And like, you know, he had to find himself, and he had to do all this
months and months, potentially years of training. When Ned just over a bread roll and lunch and dinner, he's just like, and now I'm a magic man now, Grandma.
Yeah. So that was kind of convenient, and it was kind of played for laughs, I guess. And they did at least make it so that he wasn't consistently able to do it, which helps. But it's still kind of like, it's kind of like Rey having the Force in episode 7, and she's instantly like better at it than Luke was, or whatever. So that's just one of those moments where you go, hang on a second. But like, we're in the nitpick section, so that's the only reason I would bring it up.
Yeah, no, very true, very true. And also then like how Doctor Strange was just, where was he? Who was over the Grand Canyon, wasn't he? He was tied up over the Grand Canyon in one of the multiverses for God knows how long. Like, this guy
he said 8 hours, I think he said.
Yeah, super strong, mystical, magical, and everything else in between. And yeah, some webbing and some mathematics was his downfall for 8 hours. I'm like, all right.
Convenient.
Yeah, very convenient, very convenient. But
he wasn't pissed off enough about that.
Yeah. But he did
12 hours.
He did say, you know, Scooby-Doo the shit out of it. You know, there was I've noticed a lot of these Marvel franchises now, the furthest they lean into the curse words, they drop the shit bomb. That's the word they go to when they want, ooh, there's some drama, ooh, there's some weight to this conversation. Now we said shit. That's their go-to, I've realized.
Yeah. Well, it's got to be suitable for the kiddies. Keep that PG
true.
rating. I think there's probably a rule you can get like 2 of them in per movie or something. They drop 2 of them in 10 seconds.
There's a qualifier, yeah. If you go over that curse word threshold, it's going to bump you. So, yeah. But other gripes, if we were to sort of jump to the back end, so obviously, yeah, the Spiders 3 and MJ and Ned and Doctor Strange ultimately cure all these villains of their bad ways so they can go back to their realities and not die. We don't know if they do still die. Maybe... Can you imagine if they all went back to their universe and then got hit by buses or something? They all got dropped on the freeway and then they're just dead, like
Final Destination style.
Yeah, like, but they've all gone back, and then Peter's still saying, "I don't want the world to know that I'm Spider-Man," and so Doctor Strange recast this spell, but without Peter trying to cherry pick and say, "Oh, I want MJ to still know, and Ned and Aunt May and whatever else." He just says blanket statement. Peter Parker never exists. So Spider-Man still does. The world still knows Spider-Man. They just don't know who his identity is. So all the previous movies and Spider-Man's interactions, they will know that Spider-Man was there and saved the world and da-da-da. But they just don't know that underneath that mask is a young boy from Queens. So, yeah, Tom Holland, aka Peter Parker, ultimately becomes a ghost. And
does this mean he's like Men in Black? Like no government records, no social security, like nothing?
That's my thoughts. Like, he doesn't exist. He's now just moved into his own apartment in New York City. He doesn't have a job. How can he afford these types of things? How can he get money?
Yeah. And then
I don't understand.
And then when he's at the tombstone, like the graveyard with Happy, they both say that they knew Aunt May via Spider-Man. So obviously Aunt May existed, and obviously to her Peter Parker existed, because how else would Happy know Spider-Man via Aunt May? So that also is confusing to me. I don't understand how that works.
I think because Aunt May died, maybe all the memories Aunt May had still exist. I don't know. I don't know.
It doesn't. It's like it just they weren't clear enough about it for me to be completely satisfied. There's probably someone out there that's written an article about this explaining it, or on Reddit or something, but for the average moviegoer, I think they're going to go, hang on, I don't get it. And I certainly don't get it.
They certainly glaze over it very quickly.
Yeah.
The spell is cast, the world's back to normal, and then Peter writes this big speech that he goes to prepare to see MJ at the coffee shop, and Ned's there, and he's got these words prepared to, ultimately say, hey, you know me, I'm Spider-Man, you're my boy, whatever it's going to be. It was no doubt it was going to be cute as shit, very endearing and heartfelt. But then he gets there and he realizes that the biggest sacrifice he can make is just to not open this Pandora's box again and just let them live their life and be happy and go to MIT and grow up normal, in air quotes, while Peter then just goes off on his own. And it's so sad. It's one of the saddest endings to a Marvel film or Marvel anything that I can remember, because I just wanted to find him and give him a cuddle. I'm like, you can tell me who you are. I don't care. I won't tell anybody, but this is so sad. You shouldn't be by yourself, but I get it.
Yeah. It reminds me of the ending of Butterfly Effect, which...
Yes. God, what a film. Yeah. Don't watch the sequel, but the first one...
Yeah. I was a big defender I have been a big defender of Butterfly Effect going back to the cinematic release. But there's two, like there's a cinematic and a director's cut version. Both of them involve like him deciding that this woman would be better off without him. So he's going to make that sacrifice. That's basically what he's done here, is said like he's walked in there. They both got into the college. They're both happy without him. So introducing Spider-Man into their life isn't going to be the best thing for them, I guess, is his theory. And then we've got in the chat here, was it a throwback to Toby letting MJ go in Spidey 2? Well, could very well be. And then we know that they end up together, so it's not, the story is still being written, I guess, as far as their future. Do you think it's going to open things up to like a Gwen Stacy or to some other, maybe Black Cat? I think you were saying you hope to see.
Yeah, I'm very hopeful. Like if we start sort of looking ahead and throwing some theories around or some hopes and dreams as far as this next, because they've already confirmed that there's another trilogy with Tom Holland attached to it in this Spider-Man universe getting built out as we speak. So do we get Peter just scaling it back and just becoming the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man and just dealing with those smaller crimes? Maybe he works on and off with Daredevil and Kingpin. Maybe that's going to be the next one, because it's going to obviously weave in nicely with some of these other moving parts in other franchises at the moment. So maybe we get some Daredevil Spider-Man collab work around Hell's Kitchen and Queens and what have you. Or do we still end up seeing Spider-Man or Peter Parker try to get into college? But then at the same time, he doesn't exist. So I don't know, does he just hack his way in and chuck himself in the records to be able to go to MIT and indirectly like, oh, funny I should see you here, Ned and MJ. By the way, I'm Peter. And eventually, are they gonna sort of... They're going to find out eventually. I don't think they're just going to become nothing characters. They're going to stay around for this trilogy, and I hope maybe there's going to be a spell or love conquers all. Let's go that cliche. Maybe they're going to share a kiss and it's going to bring all these memories back into MJ's head and she's going to realize who Tom Holland's Peter Parker is, because, yeah, I'm all for that. As far as other things I wouldn't mind seeing happen, I'm assuming we're going to get some Venom love, some Venom crossover. In the middle credit stinger, we get Tom Hardy's Venom hanging out at the bar in Mexico. And
I have a question about this. So I haven't seen the Venom movies because, I respect my time. Does he know that Peter Parker's Spider-Man?
Not in the movies at this stage, no. Right. But in the stinger, obviously, he's getting the 411 from the barman, who this was pre-spell getting cast. So everyone knows that this is Tom Holland as Spider-Man. He's in New York. And because you know how Eddie Brock's like, oh, maybe I need to do a trip to New York to meet this guy. And then Doctor Strange casts the spell and teleports Eddie and Venom back to whatever varied Earth he's on. But there was a bit of symbiote left on that bar. So is this going to lead to, symbiote Spidey? Or is it going to find our own version of Eddie Brock in this world? Or is it going to go down one of the other ones?
Yeah. I think it'll be a movie or two before they let that happen. I think that they'll build up to it. I think, like what you said before, is the most likely thing, that it's maybe just a Daredevil thing for a bit, and the Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, the team-ups, whatever it might be. Maybe we get some Miles Morales, like, seed plantings happening as well. Much like in the first Spider-Man game where Miles is there, but he's not quite Miles yet. I think that would be cool because I think it would make so much sense to eventually pivot into doing Miles Morales, especially with how successful Into the Spider-Verse is. And then, then I can see the symbiote becoming more of a thing later. I wanted to say, did we ever get Michael Mando's Scorpion? Like, did anything come of that? Because that was like one of the teasers at the end of Homecoming, and I'm like, well, he's got to be coming back into it at some point because he's such a great actor, and that would have been a really cool character.
Yeah, hopefully they bring it back. I do like, just as a quick throwaway, that they made fun of Rhino in Andrew Garfield's universe. But Nobu mentioned as well that I forgot about that line where Venom talks about how the symbiote can have sort of a hive mind that shares information across universes. So maybe there is going to be some connectivity there where they pull back Tom Hardy's Eddie Brock, to my frustration, in there. But if that's all we ever get as far as Tom Hardy and Tom Holland and their worlds colliding, I'd be very happy, because those Venom movies, 1 and 2, are absolutely woeful. But we will, hopefully, with the way they're implying with that symbiote hanging out in that bar, we will then get the spider symbol at least on this next iteration of Venom, if this symbiote attaches itself to Spidey first and then jumps into Eddie Brock or whoever it's going to be down the line. But yeah, give me some Black Cat. Give me her as the potential love interest at college in parallel with MJ, and see a little bit of a love triangle / Pete caught in the middle between these two women. And also there was rumors that they were working on a Kraven the Hunter movie. I would be all for bringing him in one of these next movies as well, because I'm big fan of his story and his interactions with Spidey over the years.
Do they go with the Aussie version, like the Croc Hunter kind of version, or the original?
I think they'll go the original with, like, the big lion head vest thing he rocks and the big mustache. But I'm excited. I'm excited for where they're going to go with this, because they're dedicated and committed to this. It's just, as long as Disney and Sony keep playing nice and keep allowing things to happen. Obviously, we've got Morbius coming out in Q1 of 2022. And Jared Leto's already said at a couple of press junkets that he's part of the broader multiverse for these characters. So maybe we'll get a bit of crossover with Morbius, the human man-bat. So I'm excited. And yeah, as Tilby says, we're definitely getting some Secret Wars. We're getting some Secret Wars with Nick Fury, Off-World, and some of the other things that they were obviously unpacking in Captain Marvel and everything else. There's so many stories they're trying to pull together, and Kevin Feige and his team are just puppet masters. They've got like 7,000 strings off their fingertips with all these little stories and narratives that they're just jerking here or pulling there or connecting that, and it's very impressive.
Yeah, it's cool because you have this bunch of characters that are like in space, basically. They've got nothing to do with Earth at the moment, so they can kind of go off and have their own thing, and then on Earth, you've got this kind of multiverse concept happening between like WandaVision and Doctor Strange's next movie. This movie that we've just watched, where I guess now Peter has an understanding of this multiverse. I feel like that's really going to be one of the big focuses going ahead, and maybe like the symbiote plays into that as well, being connected through the different ones. But yeah, before we finish, like what did you think of the Doctor Strange trailer at the end?
For Multiverse of Madness?
Yeah, I mean, usually we get like a little teaser, and I think that a scene that alludes to that would have been a lot more hype than just the trailer for it. It would have been cool to see him hear about like Wanda and what she was doing, or some kind of other moment that we're not like, we're going to get a trailer regardless. So it was kind of like, oh, it's just a trailer. That's what it was like for me. Yeah,
it was very strange. It was very unlike Marvel, I thought, to sort of just toss a trailer on the back of this thing, because they haven't done that before to my knowledge or my memory. I don't think they've ever just through a trailer at the end. It's always been a mid credits, end credits stinger with a big like whoa moment and a big piece of hype, but
or a joke.
Or a joke, yeah. It depends on which way they want to go. But I'm excited for Multiverse of Madness because it's from what I've read and not only from the comics and things, but also from what I've read online about the tone of what they're trying to do with this movie. Is they're trying to make this a horror movie in a lot of aspects. So it's going to be one of the darker Marvel iterations that's been in part of this MCU. And obviously we get a lot of this through What If, as far as the animated show on Disney Plus. Certainly has a lot of heavy nods to what we could expect potentially with Multiverse of Madness. So I'm excited because even though Sam Raimi did the original, like a few of the Spider-Man films with Tobey Maguire, and they didn't always hit the mark in parts, he is a god when it comes to horror and comedic horror. He's going to do really well if they let him do his own thing. If they try and hamstring him a little bit, it might be a bit scary, but I'm down for some Sam Raimi horror. I really like Benedict Cumberbatch as Doctor Strange. I love Elizabeth Olsen just in general. I have quite the crush on her, and I love her as Wanda or Scarlet Witch or whatever you want to know her as, and I'm excited to see that. And just seeing in that trailer just all these universes coming in on top of each other and the different characters that they're alluding to that may or may not be playing a role. I am excited, JP. It's going to be good. I think it's going to be very unlike a lot of the other MCU stuff we've watched the last several years. Yeah,
definitely. And then, obviously, if you've watched Loki, you've got the whole multiverse happening through that too. So it just seems to be a concept that they're trying to warm people up to as much as possible, because I just think that they're going to open things up. Whether it's bringing X-Men into it or bringing...
Fantastic Four is going to be back for the third goddamn time. X-Men will be in there. Obviously, we've got the Eternals weaving their way in now as well. So we've got so many celestial beings and alien nations and races that are just waiting to be plucked out and chucked into these movies and TV shows. It's a hell of a time to be a geek, my friend.
Yeah, absolutely. And the promise of seeing Blade coming soon as well. That's really cool. I like the idea of that too.
Very much so. I had that on my docket to mention, and you and Nobu have just brought it in, where I think that's going to be a nice thread where we're going to get Morbius and then the Blade reference maybe just in the end credit stinger, and that's just going to be like, whoa! But it sucks because the original Blade movies with Wedley Snipes, 1 and 2 are brilliant. Third one, Run Far Away. But they were fantastic, and they were very ahead of their time as far as comic book films. They were a couple of the first cabs off the rank, and they nailed it.
Yeah, they were pre-X-Men, so they definitely get points for being ahead of the pack. But yeah, imagine if they brought Chris Evans, Human Torch in, or Michael B. Jordan, Human Torch. Oh yeah, that'd have to use
so many things going on.
That, yeah.
Yeah, Midnight Suns, I think that could be on the cards. But yeah, I am hype. I'm hype, JP. I cannot wait. And yeah, this movie's phenomenal. Maybe we'll start wrapping this bad boy up, JP. Yep. What would you score the movie? And I'm going to say whatever metric you'd like to throw at it. I see you've just taken the low-hanging fruit and used the same numbering that I went with. I tried to be witty.
Well, you do yours, and then I'll explain mine.
Okay, well, I gave this movie, I put it in the show notes first, so this was in my head, funny idea. I said this was a rock-solid, sinister 6 out of 6, and this is very much 8-bit approved. Spider-Man No Way Home, the best movie I've watched all year, the most fun I've probably had watching anything all year, and I've watched a lot of anime and all these other things. This movie is just brilliant, the world loves it, and I cannot wait for more. Even if Tom Holland says he wants a break from acting, just finish these other movies first, then take a break, please.
Yeah, I mean, I just didn't read the question properly, and I just saw you say 6 out of 6. So I was like, I guess we're rating it out of 6. So I will give it a magnificent 7 out of 7.
Oh, okay. Or you could have went with Fantastic Four out of 4.
Well, that too. That would have been more clever, but hey.
Yeah, because Magnificent Seven are a bunch of people in the West.
It is.
But you know what? They're heroes in their own right.
Yeah.
Yes, but 8-Bit Nation, that brings us to the end of another episode of Spoilercast. Be sure to carry on the conversation over on our Discord or on the socials at We Are 8-Bit. But just be kind to your fellow geeks and do not spoil this movie for anyone that hasn't watched it. So keep the chatter on the Discord or on them socials. Very broad stroke. Don't get too clever. It's so good, this movie, and what a fantastic way to not only lead us into the festive season and New Year's, but also, you know, keep this positive momentum going with the MCU into 2022. We've also got the direct competitor with DC bringing out Peacemaker in the middle of January too. I'm excited for that because I was a big fan of the Suicide Squad, but Spider-Man No Way Home absolutely ran rings around the Suicide Squad. And that's no disrespect to the Suicide Squad, but this movie is very special, made me feel all the things, and I loved it. JP, anything else you want to say before we officially shut down this studio for a undetermined amount of time?
If you want to get festive, watch Hawkeye, because it is set at Christmas time, and it's really good, and it ties into some of what's happening in the MCU, which is cool. And if you want to get really festive, listen to the Bad Santa episode of Comedy Rewind with Brendan and myself.
Hell yeah. But listeners, we're gonna be doing a little bit more of this. So the listeners that are out there on the usual podcast feeds, we're trying some of these podcasts to simulcast it live on Twitch. So head on over to twitch.tv/We Are 8-Bit and chuck us a follow, just to sort of keep your eyes and ears peeled for when we do go live for some of these spoiler casts or other special edition based episodes from 8-Bit. But obviously 8bit.net is a great central hub for all that other content. On the podcast front, be sure to rate, review, subscribe us, as well as all the other podcasts you're listening to on the reg. Costs you no money, takes you very little time, and means the world. Helps keep the emotional lights on in our hearts. And something that Spotify has just released, JP, I've noticed. You can actually rate podcasts on there now too. So be sure to rate all those 8-Bit related pods and all the other pods you listen to 5 stars, because it will go a long way to help keep us track in them charts, help keep us relevant, and just do your good deed for Christmas. Cost you no money. We don't need gifts. Give us a 5-star on Spotify, and that's all we need. But 8-Bit Nation, this is officially the last time you'll hear from us for 2021. Much love.
Stay
May
hungry.
Things not get spoiled for you.
Stay hungry.
That's a work in progress.
May things not get spoiled for you. Okay.
I had a line from one of the other spoiler casts and I forgot it. But because you went to stay hungry, I just pivoted and went, ah!
Stay spoiled. All right.
Hello, Peter.